buckle up.
Yeah.
Seriously, tighten the belts. Because usually when we crack the mic here, we are obsessed with the visible stuff.
Right, the arrow.
Exactly. We're screaming about wing angles. We're looking at side pod inlets. We're obsessing over tire degradation charts and undercut strategies. But today, we are ignoring all of that. We are going completely invisible.
We are diving into the absolute heart of the beast, the combustion chamber.
Yeah, because there is a massive war happening in Formula One right now, and it's not about who has the best driver or the richest sponsor. It is a war for the actual liquid lifeblood of the sport.
The fuel.
The fuel. And I don't mean just, regular gas. We are talking about the most controversial, expensive, and frankly, scientifically complex science experiment in the history of racing.
It is the invisible revolution, and honestly, it's the only thing standing between the internal combustion engine and total extinction.
That's the stakes right there. Extinction. I mean, everyone sees the banners when you watch a race. Sustainability, net zero.
Yeah, it looks great on a press release.
It does. But what I want to know, and what the listeners are screaming to know, is what does that actually mean for the stopwatch? Is this whole green push going to kill the speed? Is it going to strangle that V6 sound we finally got used to?
That is the fear, isn't it? That in the pursuit of being virtuous, F1 loses its teeth. That it becomes a science fair instead of a gladiator pit. But look, we aren't here to guess. We are here to tear apart the science.
Exactly. We've got a stack of research here for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Centered around exclusive insights from a guy who is quite literally mixing the chemicals to power world champions.
PITARCH.
Yeah, PITARCH. Yeah. A product design scientist at REPSOL and a professor of engines.
He calls himself a motorista.
A motorista? I love that so much.
Right, an engine guy through and through.
Yeah.
And the picture he paints of what is happening inside these fuel labs right now is, well, it's mind-blowing.
It really is. We're going to break down the chemistry of bio versus synthetic. We're going to talk about the carbon-14 police.
Which sounds completely fake, but is absolutely real.
Totally real. And we're going to figure out why Max Verstappen is so incredibly worried about where this is all heading. But quickly, just a heads up before we hit the throttle, this segment is part of our news coverage of recent F1 events.
All right, let's get into the lab.
Yeah, the fuel. What are we actually talking about here? Because I think the average fan hears sustainable fuel and thinks, well, what? Electric? Hydrogen.
Yeah, are we putting batteries in the gas tank?
Right, so let's clear that up.
That's definitely the first misconception we need to smash. PITARCH is very specific here. We are not talking about hydrogen fuel cells, at least not yet. And we aren't talking about batteries. We are talking about liquid hydrocarbons, stuff that burns.
So it still goes bang.
Oh, it definitely still goes bang. But the source of that bang is what's changing. There are really two contenders in this ring, and they are completely different technologies.
This was the first real aha moment for me in the research. I always thought sustainable fuel was just one generic green sludge, like a single formula.
Not at all. There's a massive fork in the road. In one corner, you have biofuels. This is what PITARCH describes as the advanced bio route. Think of this as the trash to treasure approach.
Okay, trash to treasure. Unpack that for us.
It is literally made from organic waste. We're talking about used cooking oils from industrial fryers, agricultural biomass.
Forestry residue?
Exactly. Stuff that has already lived a life and is basically just rotting away.
So wait, just to be absolutely clear, my leftover French fry oil could end up powering a McLaren.
I mean, in a highly refined, chemically altered sense, yes. The logic here is all about the carbon cycle. That cornstalk or that olive tree sucked CO2 out of the air while it was alive. It captured the carbon.
Right.
So when you turn that waste into fuel and burn it, you're just releasing that exact same carbon back into the air.
Okay, I get that. You're recycling carbon that's already in the system.
Yeah.
But then you have the other one, the synthetic stuff. And I gotta say, reading about this feels way more sci-fi to me. This feels like actual alchemy.
This is the e-fuel or synthetic route. And honestly, this is the closest humans have come to playing God with chemistry.
That's a huge claim.
Well, think about it. With biofuel, you're letting nature do the hard work of making the carbon chains over time.
Right, the plants do the heavy lifting.
Exactly. But with synthetic, you are building the fuel molecule from scratch. You are literally sucking CO2 directly out of the atmosphere using giant fans and filters.
Taking hydrogen from water via electrolysis?
Yes, and then smashing them together in a high-pressure reactor to create a hydrocarbon.
You're knitting a fuel molecule out of thin air.
Out of thin air and electricity. You are synthesizing the liquid.
And this leads to the biggest question critics always have. People say, wait a minute, you're still burning it. You're still pumping smoke out of the exhaust.
Oh, I see this comment all the time. People say, how on earth is it sustainable if there's still exhaust fumes coming out the back of the car? It feels like a scam. It's not a scam, but it requires understanding the concept of the closed loop. PITARCH creates a great visual for this. Yes, the car emits CO2, an explosion pushes a piston, gas comes out the back. Physics hasn't changed.
So the emission is real. We aren't hiding that.
The emission is completely real, but with synthetic fuel, the CO2 coming out of that exhaust is the exact same CO2 you sucked out of the air to make the fuel last week.
It's a wash. It's net zero.
It's a zero-sum game. You aren't adding any new carbon to the atmosphere. See, with fossil fuels, what we call dinosaur juice.
Which we love.
Which we love, yes. But with that, you are digging up carbon that has been buried underground for millions of years and injecting it into the sky. That's new carbon being added to the current system.
And with synthetic, you're just moving the existing carbon around in a circle. Air to fuel to air to fuel.
Precisely. And PITARCH points out a massive, massive logistical advantage here that I think people ignore because they're just so laser-focused on electric cars right now.
The infrastructure argument. This is the part that makes so much sense to me.
It's huge. If you want the world to go fully electric, you have to dig up every single street in London and New York to lay massive copper cables. You need supercharging stations every 5 miles.
And if you go hydrogen, you need heavily pressurized pipes that basically don't exist yet.
But with this synthetic liquid,
You use the same gas station.
the exact same gas station, the same tanker truck, the same pump, you just change the liquid inside the underground tank. It is a drop-in technology.
Which is why F1 is pushing it so incredibly hard. They want to prove you can save the billion combustion cars already on the road, not just sell a bunch of new Teslas.
Exactly. It's a literal lifeline for the internal combustion engine.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second, because I'm a suspicious person by nature, and F1 teams are highly suspicious organizations.
That's putting it mildly.
Right. If this new magic fuel looks like gas, flows like gas, and smells like gas, how does the FIA know you aren't cheating?
This is where the story turns into a full-on crime procedural. Because you're absolutely right. If I'm a team principal and I know that sneaking in a little bit of old-school high-octane fossil fuel gives me 5 extra horsepower.
You're going to try it. It's F1. If you aren't cheating, you aren't trying. That is the unofficial motto of the paddock.
100%. So the policing of these invisible molecules becomes the most critical part of the new regulation. And PITARCH highlights a really fascinating split in how this is handled between F1 and other racing series like MotoGP.
Because they use completely different methods to catch the cheaters, right?
Completely different philosophies. F1 has gone the heavily bureaucratic route. They use a system called chain of custody.
That sounds like something straight out of a police evidence locker or a corporate tax audit.
It basically is a tax audit. F1 uses an external auditor, a company called CMO. They don't just test the fuel in the car at the track, they audit the entire paper trail.
They want to see the receipts.
Literally. They want to see the receipt for the biomass. They want to see the energy bill for the hydrogen electrolysis plant in Germany or wherever. They want to prove that the entire process was green.
So it's an audit. It's spreadsheets. It's lawyers in suits looking at factory data.
It's a very slow, very expensive audit. But then you look at MotoGP or World Superbikes. They do not care about the paperwork. They use physics. They use carbon-14 dating.
Wait, carbon-14, like stuff from high school biology? The stuff archaeologists use to date dinosaur bones?
The exact same technology. And it is brilliant in its simplicity. Here's the science. Carbon-14 is an unstable isotope. It's created in the upper atmosphere by cosmic rays.
Okay, cosmic rays.
Yeah. And living things, plants, trees, we constantly absorb it while we are alive.
So I'm radioactive right now.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
You are glowing on a microscopic level. But the moment an organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon-14. And that radioactive isotope starts to decay. It slowly disappears over thousands of years.
I see exactly where you're going with this. Fossil fuel is made from stuff that died millions of years ago.
Exactly. The dinosaurs and the ancient algae are long dead. All the carbon-14 in that oil is completely gone. It's totally dark, radioactively speaking.
But a biofuel.
A biofuel came from a corn stalk that was alive 6 months ago. It is literally glowing with carbon-14.
So the MotoGP officials just take a sample from the motorcycle's fuel tank, put it under a sensor, and if it glows...
It's renewable. You pass. If it's dark, it's a fossil fuel, and you are disqualified. They caught you red-handed.
That is so much cooler than a paperwork audit. Why on earth doesn't F1 just do that? It seems foolproof. It seems immediate.
Well, PITARCH hints that F1's method is about being holistic. They want to certify the energy used to make the fuel, not just the molecules themselves.
Give me an example.
Think about it like this. If you make a brilliant synthetic fuel, but you power the chemical factory with a dirty old coal power plant, is the fuel really green?
Ah, I get it. The carbon-14 test tells you the ingredients are fresh, but it doesn't tell you if the chef burned down the kitchen making the meal.
Exactly. F1 wants to audit the kitchen, but as an engineer, you have to admit it does leave room for, let's call it creative accounting. And you know these F1 teams will hire the best accountants in the world to find loopholes in that paperwork.
Guaranteed. They are already reading the rulebook backwards, which brings us perfectly to the performance side of this, because we can save the planet all day long, but if the cars are slow, nobody is watching. There was a ton of panic leading up to testing. The preseason scandal rumors.
Oh yeah, the rumor mill is spinning out of control. There were reports that some fuel suppliers, especially new ones entering the sport, just weren't ready.
And the rumor was that teams might secretly run old fossil fuel during Barcelona testing just to get the engines running reliably.
And PITARCH completely shuts this down.
How so? Because it sounds plausible to a fan.
He shuts it down, but in a very nuanced way. He admits that technically, yes, if you poured old fossil fuel into a 2026 engine, it would run. It wouldn't explode on the spot. The pistons wouldn't instantly melt.
But you wouldn't get good data.
You'd get absolute garbage data. See, this is what people forget about modern F1. The engine and the fuel are a married couple. They are developed as a single, inseparable unit.
All right, they design the hardware around the liquid.
You design the shape of the piston head, the massive pressure of the injector, the exact microsecond timing of the spark. All of it is optimized for the specific chemical density of that specific sustainable fuel.
So if you swap the fuel just to get some laps in, you're optimizing the car for a ghost.
Exactly. You'd be tuning your engine for a liquid that you legally cannot use in the race. It's a monumental waste of time. And in F1, wasting time is a lot worse than wasting money.
And this leads to the most explosive takeaway from the source material for me. This really changed my perspective, the clone theory.
It's a game changer.
Because I think you and me, and everyone listening, we all have this built-in bias that green naturally equals worse.
Right. We think of early electric cars that looked and drove like golf carts, or those terrible paper straws that dissolve in your drink after 3 sips. We automatically assume a compromise in performance.
But PITARCH says there is zero compromise here.
He says that a properly engineered 100% renewable fuel molecule is a literal chemical clone of a fossil fuel molecule.
So the incredibly complex V6 engine literally doesn't know the difference.
It has absolutely no idea. The energy density, meaning how much bang you get per drop, is identical. The flame propagation speed is identical. The cooling effect is identical.
And he didn't just say this theoretically in a classroom. He brought the receipts. He pointed to the Dakar rally.
The ultimate torture test for any engine. If F1 is a 2-hour sprint, Dakar is a brutal war of attrition. 2 weeks, desert heat, massive sand dunes, endless vibration.
And REPSOL ran a Toyota Hilux on 70% renewable fuel in the Dakar.
And here is the absolute kicker. They didn't have to redesign the engine for it. They didn't lose a single horsepower. And they didn't break down in the dunes.
They won.
They became outright champions. That is the proof right there. If a green fuel can survive the Dakar rally and beat conventional racing fuels, the performance argument is dead. The chemistry undeniably works.
Okay, so the chemistry works. It's a clone, and there is always a massive... But in Formula One, if it's a perfect clone, why is there still a development war?
That's the real question.
Right. Why are Repsol, Petronas, Shell, all these giants spending tens of millions? If it's just a clone, aren't they all making the exact same liquid? Why not just mandate a single spec fuel for all teams and save the cash?
Because clone doesn't mean simple. Gasoline isn't just one single molecule, it's a wild cocktail. It's a soup of hundreds of different hydrocarbon chains mixed together. PITARCH calls this the 1% war.
The 1% war. That sounds intense.
It's where the world championship is actually won. Look, in a normal road car, if your fuel is 1% more efficient, you save maybe a few dollars at the pump a year. You don't even notice.
But in F1, 1% is everything.
It's life or death because of the weight.
Exactly. If your fuel gives you 1% more energy per drop, you can put 1% less liquid in the tank at the start of the Grand Prix.
That's 1% less dead weight to carry around every single corner for 50 laps. That is massive lap time Or, look at it the other way, it means you can run the engine in a higher, more aggressive power mode for 3 more laps than the guy defending ahead of you.
So the championship isn't just decided by the driver's right foot anymore. It's decided by a scientist in a white coat mixing a cocktail in a lab in Spain.
It's the invisible advantage. You can't see it, you can't photograph it on the grid like a flexible front wing, but it is always there. And that brings us to the real tension in this whole debate.
The controversy. Because as impressive as this science is, the drivers aren't exactly jumping for joy right now.
Not at all. And this is the part of PITARCH's interview that really struck me. He was surprisingly honest. He took off his corporate scientist hat for a second and put on his fan hat.
He really did. He called himself a motorista, like we said earlier. He loves the noise, the smell of the track, the raw, unhinged power. And he openly admitted that while the engineering challenge is thrilling for him professionally as a fan, he is deeply skeptical.
He used words like deceived or disappointed regarding the general direction the sport is taking to accommodate this. And this connects directly to what Max Verstappen has been absolutely screaming about in the press conferences.
The Verstappen angle.
Yeah.
Max has easily been the most vocal critic of the 2026 regulations. He's flat out threatening to quit the sport.
But why? Because if the fuel is a clone and the raw power is still there, what's his actual problem?
It's not just the fuel. It's the incredibly complex system built around the fuel. To make these cars look sustainable, the FIA is forcing a 50-50 power split between electric power and combustion power.
Right, and that requires a massive, heavy battery pack.
A huge battery. And because they want to heavily limit fuel consumption to look even greener, the drivers are going to have to do extreme lift and coast at the end of every straight.
So you're not pushing flat out to the braking zone. You're managing systems. You're constantly staring at a screen on your steering wheel.
Exactly. Max feels the driver is becoming an IT systems administrator, not a gladiator fighting a machine.
PITARCH acknowledges this completely. He says we're moving rapidly toward a Formula One where the driver manages complex chemistry and battery electrons far more than raw, unbridled speed.
It just feels simulated.
That's the exact word. It feels artificial. The car is doing the heavy math, and the driver is just operating the inputs when the computer tells them to.
But PITARCH did offer a glimmer of hope amidst all this doom and gloom. A history lesson, really. The Honda precedent.
That's the voice of reason we need here. Do you remember 2015 when Honda came back to F1 with McLaren?
Oh, man. GP2 engine. Fernando Alonso just screaming on the radio in Japan. It was a disaster. It was painful to watch as a fan.
It was utterly humiliating for Honda. The engines were blowing up every weekend. They were painfully slow on the straights. They sounded terrible. But they stuck with it.
They did. They didn't quit.
They refined the tech. They figured out the complex hybrid harvesting. They optimized the fuel burning. And what happened eventually? They powered Max Verstappen to total dominance.
PITARCH's point is that we are looking at 2026 and panicking because it's radically new.
Right. He's saying there will inevitably be growing pains. There will be massive failures. Cars will randomly stop on track. Fuel calculations will be disastrously wrong. But the technology will mature. The engineers in the paddock are simply too smart for it to stay bad for long.
So patience is the game here. But that raises the ultimate question. Is the modern F1 audience patient enough? We live in a fast-paced world. We want instant gratification. We want wheel-to-wheel explosions right now.
And that leads us to the final verdict. PITARCH says he is waiting to see. He's not sold yet on whether this extreme complexity is actually good for the show, even if he knows it's an absolute miracle of engineering.
It's the classic F1 conflict. Engineering brilliance versus entertainment value. The fuel is amazing, specifically because it's invisible. It theoretically saves the planet without visually changing the car. But if the regulations forced around it make the actual driving boring shock, does it even matter if the fuel is green?
That is the existential question. If we are watching a heavily regulated science experiment instead of a visceral race, we have lost something fundamental to the sport. But look at the alternative.
Extinction, like we said at the start.
Exactly. If F1 doesn't do this, if they don't explicitly prove that a combustion engine can be completely carbon neutral, then the V6 engine dies. It gets outlawed globally. F1 just becomes a faster Formula E.
And absolutely nobody listening to this deep dive right now wants that.
So maybe this incredibly complex, difficult, heavy hybrid era is just the harsh price we have to pay to keep the noise, to keep the fire, to keep the actual soul of the machine alive.
That is a brutally tough trade-off. Save the engine, but leash the driver.
It's a compromise. But PITARCH seems to think it's the only viable way forward. The chemistry is solved. the clone fuel works. Now it's entirely up to the FIA rule makers to make sure it's still actually fun to watch on a Sunday.
And that brings me to a final thought, something I really want you all to chew on. If the fuel is 100% clean and the net emissions are truly zero, why are we stuck with these heavy V6 hybrids at all?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right. If the liquid is entirely guilt-free, what is stopping Formula One from ripping out the heavy batteries and bringing back a screaming, naturally aspirated V10 that runs on synthetic fuel?
That is a phenomenal point. If the fuel is green, the engine doesn't have to be small.
Exactly. We could have the golden era sound back with zero carbon footprint. Now, that is something to debate. We've laid out the science today, the trash-to-treasure biofuels, the sci-fi air capture synthetics, the glowing carbon-14 police. But does any of that matter to you when the lights go out?
I really want to know if you, the listeners, care where the fuel comes from as long as the car is blisteringly fast. Does the green label actually make you feel better about watching the sport? Or is it just a corporate marketing sticker to you?
That's the real debate. Is the invisible revolution saving F1, or is it sanitizing it? Let us know your thoughts. We want to see an absolute fight in the comment section over this.
And hey, keep an eye on those exhaust pipes when 2026 rolls around. Same smoke, just younger carbon.
Younger carbon. I'm completely stealing that. If you want to stay on top of the raw tech, the paddock politics, and the sheer speed, don't forget to follow DRS Zone right now. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We are living every corner right alongside you.
See you at the checkered flag.